What is an intifada? In the global protests against Israel over these past many months, we're hearing phrases like globalized intifada or intifada against Israel. But what is an intifada really? Shalom, my friends. This is Akiva Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or want to keep things going, the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. Israel suffered through two different periods called an intifada. In these protests around the world against Israel since October 7th, we're hearing this phrase, globalized intifada, continue the intifada against Israel. But people need to understand what is an intifada. And when they do, my hope is that they would never want an intifada for Israel or anyone in the world. As I just said, Israel went through two different time periods, lasting many years each one, of what was called an intifada. An intifada is an Arabic word which literally means shaking off, but was used and is used to describe a very violent uprising, in this case against Israel. Now, the first intifada started in 1987 and lasted all the way to 1993. Through those years, many Israeli civilians and soldiers were attacked, injured, and killed. Different attacks of all kinds with knives and bottles and Molotov cocktails, and even worse. It was a very, very intense time period for Israel. But the second intifada is the main intifada that most Israelis think about, and that was even worse than the first. It started in 2000 and went all the way to 2004 and saw over 1,000 innocent Israelis killed, murdered during this time. Now, how did it start? What was it about? In 2000, there was another attempt, one of the really last attempts to bring peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians at the very end of President Bill Clinton's term. Those peace talks failed, and Yasser Arafat, the leader of the PLO, came back to this region and launched the Second Intifada. It was found that afterwards that he had already planned it in advance, that he knew he wasn't going to accept any peace with Israel, because accepting peace with Israel accepted the existence of Israel, which he was never ready to do, never willing to do. He comes back in 2000, launches the Second Intifada, and for the next 4+ years, there were all kinds of suicide bombings and attacks against Israelis in all kinds of public and common places, supermarkets, bus stations, buses themselves. Many buses were blown up by suicide bombers who boarded the bus with dozens and dozens of travelers and exploded themselves while on the bus during the journey, killing and injuring many every single time. One of the worst was a Passover Seder during the early years of the Second Intifada, in which many Israelis were killed while they were sitting around their tables with loved ones at a hotel in Netanya, with loved ones, family, and friends, celebrating being Jewish, talking about the story of the Exodus and Jewish freedom, right? While a suicide bomber came into this large dining hall, exploded himself, killing many Israelis. This went on and on and on for 4 years. It was a terrorizing and terrible time for Israel. Tourists stopped coming. Teenagers weren't allowed to go out. Businesses closed. Economically, it was very, very devastating for the country, and of course, psychologically as well. It was a very, very intense time, one of the worst times Israel has ever experienced. So for Israelis today to hear people around the world calling for the continuation of an intifada, a new intifada, globalizing the intifada, we more than anybody realize how bad, how evil an intifada really is, and how nobody, no good person would ever or should ever wish an intifada on any person, on any country, on any people. Right? The Second Intifada finally came to an end in 2004 as a result of many different things that the Israeli government and the IDF did in order to squash it, to stop it, and to make sure that these terrorists could not get into Israeli towns and cities to launch their terror attacks, usually exploding themselves. Obviously, that did not bring an end to terror. There's been many waves of terror ever since, but think on nothing like the Second Intifada, where again, the main way of attacking Israelis were through these suicide bombers. People would come to a place with a suicide belt, filled with bombs and explode themselves right there on the spot. So my hope and my prayer is that more and more people will understand what an intifada really is. And when they do, they will never, ever call for an intifada against anybody.